Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our side event on the implementation of quality assurance for official statistics using the UN National Quality Assurance Framework Manual as a guide. I am Grace Bersales, representing Philippines as co-chair of this group, and with me is the co-chair, Mr. Chepita of the Statistics Canada. We actually presented the National Quality Assurance Framework in our session yesterday, and to my mind, it was one of the well-received initiatives, and we are eager for us in this side event to have more discussion about it and get more inputs from everyone. We will do 2 rounds in a way. We will have Matthias Reister of UNSD do a presentation for us on what this is about, and we will open the floor for questions, after which we are going to do another round of discussion from a panel, and again open the floor for discussions. So I look forward to very active participation, getting more comments before the group again commences continuing work on this initiative. I would like to give the floor first to Ryan for introduction as well.
Thank you, Lisa. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm honored to be here at the United Nations Statistical Commission on behalf of Statistics Canada. Since 2017, Canada has served as a co-chair on the United Nations expert group to build a new national quality assurance framework. And we are proud of the fruits of the expert group's strong collaboration. At Statistics Canada, our mission statement is serving Canada with high-quality statistical information that matters. Many of you will be well familiar with the many dimensions of data quality. We have 6 in Canada. These dimensions are represented in our mission statement. Serving Canada means that our data products must be accessible to and interpretable by our data users. High-quality statistical information means that our data must be accurate and coherent. Information that matters means that these data must be timely and relevant. Of course, these dimensions must not only be applied to our output data, but also to our statistical processes and to the people who work on them. If we are going to practice what we preach, then we must stay relevant. 2019 is an exciting time for quality, one that carries some key challenges. For one, survey data are increasingly being replaced by myriad administrative and big data sources. Furthermore, in light of the 2030 agenda for SDGs, there will be an unprecedented amount of new demands for important data, and this undertaking must include strong collaboration with new data providers and producers. For both of these challenges, quality will be crucial to their success. So how do we stay relevant in these changing times? There is no better way to do so than to collaborate closely with our global partners in statistics. Within our expert group, there is consensus that international standards and methods must be in place to promote a quality management strategy that is sound, robust, and modern. We believe that the 2019 version of the UN's National Quality Assurance Framework achieves this goal and will be vital for us to address and conquer our quality challenges. With this, we endorse and call for the adoption of the new UN National Quality Assurance Framework and its eventual global implementation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ryan. May I give the floor now to Matthias?
Thank you very much. I'm Matthias Reister from the United Nations Statistics Division, and let me first thank the 2 co-chairs of this expert group for their excellent steering of this process. It really takes a lot of coordination and understanding to be able to coordinate well and bring everybody together, and at the end to produce a useful output. So this meeting is about implementation of quality assurance framework. But before we talk about that, we would like to first introduce the new manual and also allow some questions. Here on my first slide, you see the structure of the new manual. And here in Chapter 1, you have an introduction that sounds relatively harmless. However, already in the introduction, we provided a couple of definitions that are really essential for establishing a common language, because we found that often, also in the expert group, we were talking about things but not using the same words. So we found it very important, and actually a lot of discussion went into the establishment of the right terminology. Now in chapter 2, here for the first time we have recommendations on quality assurance for official statistics. I would like to recall that the UN NQAF of 2012, it was purely descriptive. It basically said, if you want to establish a national quality assurance framework, please look at what we provide. So it was purely descriptive, didn't contain any recommendations. So this is a big change of this manual, that now we have recommendations and we didn't make them up. No, they are strictly based on the fundamental principles of official statistics and other relevant guidance provided by member states. So this is really a transformative change for the UN manual. For example, the European Union has the code of practice. It's very obvious that this is normative. However, for UN NQAF, it wasn't clear what's the normative character. And while UN NQAF, the framework itself, it's again purely descriptive. However, now we have a complementary recommendations that establish their normative character. Now in the green box, we talk about implementation. And this is also something new that we didn't have before. People were asking us about UN NQAF and said, so, but no, I'm now in a country, I need to advise. And I really find that what you provided in 2012, it's very useful as such, but not sufficient. So we were really listening to these voices and really hope to provide implementation guidance for some of the most relevant issues, which is of course quality assurance throughout the national statistical system. So we discussed the issue of coordination. We address quality assurance for the SDG indicators, and we also address quality assurance for data from different data sources. Now in Chapter 9, this is also a very interesting chapter, although it just provides references. However, it addresses the quality assurance in the global statistical system. So it's really in the discussion of the SDG indicators, it really came about, why is my data different than your data? We don't really agree with the data that you have at the global level. And here to address that issue, we put the relevant guidance also in this manual so that countries have a reference point to see what international organizations are obliged to do. And also what's their own role in cooperating with international agencies. So it just comes across as reference, and it's just reference. However, I also find that this Chapter 9 really brings some information together that wasn't available in such a way before. It was spread around, but now we have it in one manual. So and then the annex, here really the detailed checklist of the elements to be assured. This really corresponds to the UN NQAF with the principles and recommendations there, and it's just a complementary part. So and here in this next slide, we just listed how a country could go about in establishing its own national quality assurance framework. So I'm not going really here in details. However, just here to see, we would start with Chapter 2. What are the recommendations? What are the UN recommendations? And here we have some very strong recommendations that basically recommend to institutionalize quality assurance for the national statistical system, for the NSO and throughout the national statistical system. And then here you can see we have different chapters. Chapter 5, one part is really concerned, how do I go about developing a quality assurance framework? And we list all the steps and the necessary institutional setup that would be helpful. I mean, again, implementation guidance, it's not normative, it's just sort of a sharing of best practices, how countries could go about. So now here, I talked a lot already about the overarching core recommendations. And here, of course, the number one is integrate the fundamental principles of official statistics in the institutional and legal frameworks. I mean, we talked a lot about that in these past days. So here also a very specific recommendation. Then also include a requirement for quality assurance in the statistical legislation. Some countries have only one statistical law. However, many countries, depending on different activities, they have additional statistical laws. And here we are really saying, please include it in all concerned statistical laws. So I will not go, in the interest of time, I will not go through all of them. But here we really have some very strong recommendations. Here, of course, the core, the heart of the manual is the UN NQAF. So here where we have the 19 principles, these are the same 19 principles as we had before. Also, we ensured continuity with our previous UN NQAF. Of course, there was a lot of discussion, where should we put that? Isn't there a better way to arrange? However, we wanted to maintain continuity and also from our aspect, there are different ways to arrange things. And the manual, it's meant to assist all countries, no matter what quality assurance framework they're using. If you don't have one, why don't you use UN NQAF? But if you have one already, that's entirely fine as well. Because we found that this discussion maybe from, 10 years ago, what is the better one? What are the right dimensions? I mean, you can really slice and dice things differently. The important thing is that we reflect all the relevant elements. And here I'm also showing how Chapter 3 really corresponds with the annex. So Chapter 3 is very concise. And I should really thank to others like European Union, their code of practice. Of course, they showed us how it's possible to deliver the necessary information in a very concise way. So we try to do that, the same in Chapter 3. However, more detailed information on elements to be assured that we put in the annex. Before, in the previous version, it was not structured in the same way, and now we hope to have it structured in a way that's just more useful. You get an overview, you get all the principles and requirements, and if you need more detail on this requirement, go to the annex. And here just some example of some of the chapters. So quality assurance for the SDG indicators. We thought this was a very important topic. However, when we had interventions on Wednesday, actually it was not as central as I had expected. But nevertheless, here for countries that are interested, that have their experts on the indicators, here we try to pull information that is particularly relevant for the compilation of the SDG indicators. It's not new information. However, it's presented in a way that hopefully is facilitates the implementation of quality assurance in respect to the SDG indicators. Of course, one very important motivation in terms of contents was also quality assurance in the new data ecosystem. This was actually what came up on Wednesday. Many referred to that issue. What is our role as a National Statistical Office? And here I would like to highlight recommendation number 5. So it is recommended that the National Quality Assurance Framework is implemented at the National Statistical Office and throughout the entire National Statistical System. Furthermore, it is recommended that the National Quality Assurance Framework is applied to all data and statistics produced outside of the national statistical system that is disseminated with the help and support of a member of the national statistical system, or that is used for government decision making as deemed appropriate and required. So here clearly we open the door to apply our quality assurance framework to data provided by others. Whether countries are doing it or not, I mean, it's up really to countries also here to decide what is appropriate and what is required. Also, it's really depends on national circumstances, and the expert group just cannot prescribe how it should be done. So this recommendation is very important. Also, quality assurance in the new data ecosystem, we really went through the principles and requirements and looked into the things, to what extent does it reflect the changed data ecosystem. And one very important principle and associated requirement related to data access. So the issue of data access, when you look into that, that is now much better reflected than in the previous manual. And then also Chapter 7 on different data sources. Here we clearly distinguish statistical data sources, administrative data sources, and other data sources based on for what purpose the data is being compiled. Of course, data sources can be classified differently, but for our purposes, we found that this is the proper, a suitable approach that put that way. So with this, I think this was my last slide. And here we have a little word chart. So this is when we used the manual and thought and checked what are the most frequent words. Of course, statistics, quality, data, use, assurance, and all of that. With this, I would like to conclude. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Matthias. Before I open the floor for interventions, I would just like to thank the members of the expert group. So Canada and the Philippines co-chair the expert group, and 17 countries and 8 international organizations are members as of February 2019. And the countries are Chile, China, Colombia, Egypt, Indonesia, Iran, Italy, Jamaica, Japan, Mexico, Niger, Norway, South Africa, Ukraine, Vietnam, and the international organizations are FAO, IMF, OECD, World Bank, ECA, ECE, ECLAC, SCAP. So I would like to thank these countries and these international organizations for the work that has been done. But this is ongoing work, and so we are here today to open up the discussion and get more inputs so that the expert group can further enhance the manual. And moving forward, my vision for the group is to really get comments from countries, because as we said, this is a recommendation and each country has its own context, and the country has to use this in its context. But everyone agrees. The issue now that I'm always hearing in the UN Statistical Commission is quality of information that we provide. So may I now open the floor for any comments? Yes, please, Brazil. I request introducing yourself and then give your intervention. Thank you.
Roberto Aliento, from Brazilian Statistical Geography and Statistics. Now, as a comment, but also try to provoke some debate, because one thing we are feeling when we're managing data statistics in a country, is, especially a country like Brazil, it's a little bit huge of data producers being created on the last times. And what we could see is the national statistical systems is increasing. We have a lot of, and usually the data, official data, in some definitions are data produced by the government. And this is a great trap, because now with the manual, I think could be clear the idea. It's official data is not only data produced by the federal or state government, but also in accordance with some quality standards. And this brings another issue to also for discussion, the role of statistical office. We, among our different statistical services, in my case, geoscience services, there are a role to start certificating others data producers. This is important. It's a very a great responsibility, but with this new data environment, it's important to see how important it is to understand what's official now, or with quality. And another thing, the role of statistical office, it's not more the ideal coordinator of the system. I think like a little bit empty in the sense, but more proactive attitude, trying to define standard codes, the manual quality, and certificate official data. Thank you. So just to provoke discussion.
Thank you very much. So the issue that Roberto is putting forward is the role of the statistics office. Are we just coordinator? But what does that mean? Being proactive and eventually doing some certificates of assurance, quality assurance of other data producers. So that's open for discussion. May I call on others to give their comments? Yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Omar Seidu from Ghana Statistical Office. And thank you to the expert group for this wonderful work. I think it's timely for us as we have started to put together a data quality assurance framework for the national statistical system in Ghana. And one of the things that we identified is co-creating with civil society, academia, and the other players within the national statistical system to make it easy for them to subscribe to its use. So one of the key things that we have identified is a lot of civil society organizations within the country are producing some data that is useful for the local areas that that data is relevant to. But because we do not have a framework for assessing the quality, often government departments at the local level are unable to make use of this data. So we thought it was very important to engage with civil society and co-create the quality assurance framework so that it becomes more easier for them to identify with it and use it, so that we can together ensure that we leverage all the data produced within the country for policy planning. So I think this is very good, and it would help our work. And we hope to feed back to the expert group on the lessons we learn as we start working sometime later this month. We are actually beginning the work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Omar. I really like what you said, where there is a lot of data being produced by civil society at the really subnational level, like local areas, which may be used for policy making at that level. And now you are engaging with them with this quality assurance framework. You now have this framework for which data quality assurance is there for the local government units to use. So this is now the issue of how we will use the quality assurance framework at the disaggregated subnational level, which is now the demand for the statistical system. May I have, yes, please. Yeah.
Microphone?
May I request the use of microphone?
Is it appropriate at this stage of the discussion to address suggestions for future work of the expert group related to implementation?
That is actually the next agenda item. So we will have another round of discussions. Thank you very much.
You.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Liv Rogner from Statistics Norway, and again I want to congratulate the group for the extensive work done. It's been we participated in the group, and it's been my colleague who's done it, so I can congratulate them as well. And it comes very timely, as Ghana says. We hope it will give a push to more countries to look at this framework again and to start working with systematic quality assurance in their organizations. As mentioned already in the Commission meeting on Tuesday, there are several new elements in the update that can guide both newcomers and those who already have implemented NQAF or similar frameworks. We will also consider, as a development partner, to see how this can fit out into our technical assistance projects in partner countries. From my experience, introducing such frameworks brings up very useful discussions in the organizations when implemented and taken to the next level. If you have internal reviews or peer reviews or similar activities, it really becomes a tool for improvement in the organization. So in Statistics Norway, we have been using it. We have been using the European Code of Practice, which is a sister framework, for quite many years for in-house reviews of statistical domains. And with the upcoming revised Statistics Act coming in Norway, hopefully this year, we will probably apply this also to the whole national statistical system. And we experienced that the other statistical producers of official statistics are really interested in this activity, as they see this really, it really raises their position internally in their organizations, which might not have statistics as a core activity. So we're looking forward to see how we can bring this work further with the implementation plan, and yeah, again, congratulations with the work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Another very good comment about where the quality assurance framework can be used, and this is for internal and peer reviews, and as mentioned by Matthias earlier, the suggestion is this NQAF quality assurance framework could be embedded in statistical acts. So, in Norway, you are in the process of revising your statistical act?
The red one, yeah. Actually, the European Statistics Act is kind of one of the prerequisites why we're doing the revision, and they have the European Code of Practice. So yes, it's kind of embedded in the Statistics Act. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, please.
Okay, it's red. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Maria João Leão. I'm from Statistics Portugal, and I also would like to congratulate the group for the excellent work done. We are not part of the group, but we have been following since last year's this handbook, and I have to say that in my country, this type of quality assurance framework, we also have, like Norway, a code of practice for the European statistics and our own quality assurance framework. But it is very important that you say that there is no conflict between and to stress that this is a big issue sometimes for countries. And another question that I would like to share or to raise is the importance of these instruments or tools for the coordination function in practice. We have several other national authorities that we are responsible for as a statistical office, as a statistical authority, and bringing the exercise that we had along the peer review in 2014 and 15, we have to say that this type of instrument is absolutely crucial to implement and assess the coordination function, because it's very practical, it's very systematized, and it helps a lot the relationship between the NSI and the other national authorities, as Norway was saying, because they have other functions as well, and it's there are very good instruments to focus on the process itself. So it's I have to just to stress the importance and to endorse for everyone to use it as much as possible. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Maria. Touching also on what Roberto earlier said, that this is very important for the coordination function of the Statistics Office. But again, reiterating no duplication or conflict with existing frameworks like the European Code of Practice. May I ask for just one more comment, then we go to the next panel, if there is one more. I guess we're okay. We're right on time. Thus, we go now to the next panel, and I give the chairing of this second part of our side event to Ryan. Ryan, please.
Thank you, Lisa. As Matthias mentioned earlier, the next part of the session will be about the implementation of this new National Quality Assurance Framework. So before opening the floor, I would like some comments from the chair of the expert group, Matthias, and then it will be Lisa's turn to speak on it. So Matthias, please.
Thank you very much. So I'm the secretariat of the expert group. So you are the chair actually of the expert group. Yes. So I'm just a secretary, and I have the pleasure to have an introductory presentation here on the issue of implementation. I guess I have to press. So we just had it minutes ago, and now, 1 second. Okay. Okay, Thomas, if you can continue checking to bring up the presentation, and I will continue anyway. So I have at least here on my screen, I have a beautiful, yes, now you see, I have a beautiful chart of how we think the development and implementation, how it's starting and how it's developing. And here, really, first the country will have to develop its own national quality assurance framework that can also just consist of adopting an existing one. Then the next step would be, the next obvious step would be the implementation for all the work the national statistical system is doing. And then the next step would be to extend its application throughout the national statistical system. And then the final step to apply it to the expanded ecosystem as appropriate and needed. So this is where we can see how you start, and then it's implemented in a wider and wider way. And of course, how is the manual assisting you? It provides you with recommendations. It provides you with a quality assurance framework if you need one. You can also adopt your regional quality assurance framework. That's entirely fine. It's no problem at all. This is a manual that is meant to apply to no matter what quality assurance framework you are having. If you don't have one, of course, we suggest why don't you use UN NQAF, but you can also take your regional one, assuming it's aligned with the ideas represented in the major existing quality assurance frameworks. For example, the one of IMF, or the one from Eurostat, or the one also available in other regions. And then here we provide that no matter what's your quality assurance framework, the manual provides implementation guidance. So now, before we actually as an expert group started our work in deep, we also had a survey, and we asked countries to what extent do you apply a to what extent do you have and apply a national quality assurance framework. And here we had 127 responses to our survey, and of those, 51 said that they do not yet have a national quality assurance framework. 51. So this is 20 in Africa, and Africa is actually 2/3 of countries that responded don't have a national quality assurance framework. So in America, in the Americas, there's 10 countries of those that responded that don't have a national quality assurance framework. However, that's still 50% have one. Here the ratio in Asia is better. 16 countries said, no, we don't have it. And 23 said they have it. Now I lost my, my screen here. And in Europe was the region actually where quality assurance frameworks were most widely applied. Okay. No, it's fine. Okay, it just seems that my particular screen is not working as the others. Thank you very much. So then we also asked for the reasons why countries don't have a national quality assurance framework. And here, of those that replied, the number one reason was lack of financial and human resources. Then came lack of training, lack of subject matter support, meaning expertise, not a priority, or lack of legal basis. So these were the reasons why countries do not have a national quality assurance framework. And then we also asked what assistance do you need? And I think it was a closed questionnaire, but with also the possibility of some open responses. So with having said that, just here now to some detailed results. Of those countries that responded to this part of the survey, the overwhelming majority said they need assistance in the design of instruments and support in the implementation of those instruments. So this was the number one. Also then 38 out of the 50 countries that responded, they require hands-on technical materials and guidance. Also a high number asked for workshops and specific advisory services. Some countries requested that we assess the current situation, and also half of the countries that responded also said they would need additional human resources. So while half said they would need additional human and probably also financial resources, this was not the main reason for not implementing NQAF, or that was not the main thing countries were asking for. Now I come to the initial proposal for an implementation plan that the expert group came up with. It's an initial proposal because this is just now the start of the discussion. So we finished our work on the manual. Now, of course, we started thinking about implementation, but we are not assuming at this stage that we have already a finished plan. This is also the purpose of this side event, to hear from you, and clearly the expert group needs to discuss further. So one of course, very important, and we should never forget that. So the Statistical Commission has adopted, or hopefully then tomorrow in its decision will adopt the manual. However, this is still only a draft, so the manuscript has to be finished, it has to be edited, it has to be printed, and it also has to be translated. Very important that is also significant work ahead of us, but we will be very focused and try to do that as fast as possible, also understanding the importance of having a final document in your hands as soon as possible. Also, we want to consider additional country experiences and good practices. And here we have a website of UNSD. It's quite a comprehensive repository. However, we also realize that this maybe needs to be better utilized. I mean, there's no expectation that someone will look. Yeah, it's just not, the screen is just not working, but which is fine. So we collected already your country experiences, but we realized that more work needs to be done to make it more usable. Also, that brings me then also to the need to supplementary guidance and materials, case studies, best practices. It was also suggested maybe to develop a generic roadmap, but also what came up very often on Wednesday is this self-assessment or peer assessment. I think that many countries mentioned, so this is clearly something the expert group will put up for its internal discussions. Of course, all these materials need to be shared and made available in the proper way. So aside from providing all this guidance and materials, we also feel there is a need that maybe the activities that are ongoing are going to be in some way coordinated, or if this is not possible, at least that some cooperation in those activities is taking place. We know many institutions are undertaking efforts, and we are very eager to link up with them and not to, how can I say, replicate in a negative way, but really working together in a way that we send a joint message, work together, and basically coordinate our support to countries. So this is really the intention of the expert group, and I know many have this intention, but I hope based on the good cooperation that we had already in the expert group, I'm actually looking very much forward in working together with countries and international organizations. So this concludes my small, actually not so small intervention on this item implementation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Matthias. Lisa, do you have any comments on the implementation?
Thank you very much, Ryan. What I would just like to report is what we are doing in the Philippines. I must disclose that the Philippines is one of those 16 countries in the Asia-Pacific region without a national quality assurance framework. However, we have some mechanisms instituted in so many decades already on assurance, quality assurance in some of our activities. For example, in the Philippine statistical system, we have already been implementing for 30 years the statistical survey review and clearance system. In this system, all government agencies, including government corporations at the national and subnational level, are asked to submit to the Philippine Statistics Authority, and in the past, the former National Statistical Coordination Board, their plans for conduct of surveys, and we actually review these designs of their surveys to ensure that they do not duplicate existing surveys, and that the conceptual frameworks and operational definitions that have been approved for official statistics are actually being used in those surveys. Furthermore, since 1996, the Philippine statistical system has implemented the system of designated statistics, which is a mechanism that identifies and generates the most critical and essential statistics required for social and economic planning analysis. And when a particular activity or statistical product is in this system of designated statistics, we submit to our budget ministry any proposal from a particular agency to do this, to support and provide budget support for the activity. We also have the special data dissemination standards of the IMF. We subscribe to that since August 1996. We therefore have all of these mechanisms, but we don't have a national quality assurance framework. So the good news is, one important result of our being part of the expert group is that we hastened the Philippine Quality Assurance Framework, and in August this year, we are going to submit this Philippine Quality Assurance Framework to our Philippine Statistics Authority Board for approval. The PSA Board is the highest statistical policy-making body in the Philippines. And so that's where we are, and we are really, aligning our Philippines Quality Assurance Framework to this UN NQAF. But I would like to say that we are really into looking at administrative data. So we also already have this survey review clearance system. Now we are instituting what we call the MHARIS. This is the mechanism for harmonization of administrative records, registers, and information systems. So this is the twin of the survey clearance system. We want to look at administrative records, registers that are being done by the various line agencies and other agencies in the Philippines. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ryan.
Thank you, Lisa. To continue the panel discussion, I would next like to call Paul Austin from the IMF Statistics Department to talk about the efforts and the approach of the IMF and its link with the overall efforts.
Thank you very much, Ryan.
Yep.
Okay. First, I wanted to say that the IMF very much welcomes and recognizes the importance of data quality, and in that regard, we very much appreciate the work that has been done by the expert group. I am very pleased to have been associated with this work, and I'm happy here today to be able to share some of the experiences that we've had in our institution with regard to data quality. The IMF's mandate, as you know, encompasses macroeconomic and financial sector issues that bear on global stability. As such, this work requires a high level of quality in terms of macroeconomic and financial statistics from our member countries. In turn, our 189 member countries have looked to our leadership in setting international standards and codes, including those that relate to methodologies for economic statistics, as well as our support in implementing those standards and codes through our capacity development work. However, I wanted to say that our approach on data quality just not is limited to that of being a data user and with regard to our own work of surveillance. We see data quality in a much broader context. First, it is very important that we have an accurate understanding of what is going on in an economy and, by extension, the global economy. Second, data quality is very important in helping governments to monitor, implement, formulate important policies such as fiscal and monetary policies. Third, economic data that are of high quality helps to improve the climate for trade, investment, and the deepening and/or evolution of financial markets. And finally, data quality is important for fostering transparency and accountability, which are very important in recent times for civil society. I would characterize the work of the IMF on data quality as falling within three broad categories. As my colleague from the Philippines just mentioned, one of our earlier focus of our work has been on data dissemination. In the 1990s, we had the Mexican and the Asian crisis, and this resulted in the need and recognition for better data transparency, which give birth to the Special Data Dissemination Standard and the General Data Dissemination System. As you know, these standards have since evolved, and we now have today a third tier, what is called the SDDS Plus, and we have also upgraded the GDDS into an enhanced general data dissemination system that focuses more on disseminating data through national summary data pages, as well as holding countries to the well-important principle of advanced release calendars. The second anchor of our work, which is very much related to the topic today, has been our own development of the data quality assessment framework. And to some extent, there might be an elephant in the room. People always ask what's the difference between the NQAF and the DQAF, and I will address this later in my comments. The third important component of our work is that of statistical methodologies, and that is to some extent always ongoing. We have in the mid-2000s completed the work which relates to the system of national accounts. We also had the Balance of Payments Manual moving to the 6th edition, and that also gave rise to other manuals in government finance statistics, monetary and financial statistics, and external debt statistics. All of these initiatives, a key driver has of course been how we respond to what policymakers need. As I mentioned earlier, the financial crisis of the 90s triggered the data standards, and more recently, with regard to what is called the Great Financial Crisis, we also had the development of the Data Gaps Initiative, which is now in its second tranche. Underlying all of these things is a strong commitment to push data quality as an important foundation for high-quality data. And in this regard, methodologies are equally important because in addressing emergent economic developments, we must first of all be able to know what we're measuring, how we're measuring, what we're not measuring, and foremost for an institution like the IMF to ensure that what we measure also allows for international comparison so that when we advise on policies, when we make decisions, they're based on the principle of even-handedness. With regard to the NQAF versus the DQAF, the way I see the NQAF is that it's the 30,000 feet view. And I think what is important in the manual is the important delineations between looking at the statistical system, the institutional environment, the statistical processes that underlie all of this, as well as the statistical outputs. The IMF data quality assessment framework, while we have a generic typology, the actual focus has been more on data-specific ones. And so, for example, we have a DQAF on the balance of payments framework, we have a DQAF on the national accounts, to name a few. And these tools are, if you like, assessments that take a snapshot view of what is the state of a particular data set today. In this regard, I see the NQAF as complementary in the sense that it digs deeper in looking not only at the product, but also in all of the other areas such as the systems that underlie the generation of that product. And it also forces us to look deeper at the source data, which is a very challenging issue in these times. The second aspect of how the NQAF and the DQAF relates is that I think it's important that we see more the complementary aspects here, in that doing assessments of data quality are important for us to be able to identify what are the statistical priorities. And for many countries, small open economies, economies that depend heavily on donor support for building statistical capacity, it is important that we provide a framework that tells us what are our weaknesses in terms of systems, but also what are the priorities for statistical reform, as well as, importantly, the risks that are associated with implementing certain projects. And here, I think the NQAF brings a broader dimension. So, for example, when we do a quality assessment, let us say on balance of payments, we would identify, for example, the shortcomings as it relates to how does a particular country's GDP compare with that of the methodological requirements of the SNA 2008. I think what the NQAF brings is the broader view of also looking at, well, what is the source data and how can we apply a quality system to ensuring that such source data also meet the requirements to support methodologically sound statistical outputs. This brings me to the third point. In all of this, capacity development is very important. The IMF provides technical assistance and training to our membership, and in fact, capacity development occupies perhaps about 40% of our total budget. In Statistics Department, we have provided, both at regional and international levels, increasing forms of technical assistance in all areas of economic statistics under our domain, that is the national accounts and price statistics, government finance statistics, monetary and financial statistics, and external sector statistics, as well as some new age items, such as, for example, the Financial Access Survey, and more recently, a greater focus on balance sheet statistics. In that regard, we think that in implementing the NQAF program, we would be very happy to support the continued work on technical assistance and training efforts, and from our own particular advantage point, that of with the focus on methodological soundness. In closing, I think the manual in addressing the fact that it needs to have evolved as a result of the changing eco-data systems, and also to the changing economic phenomenon, really provide some kind of steering for national statistical offices. We live in an age where space tourism is no longer a dream. We have cryptocurrencies that challenges our notion of what is money. These are the kinds of realities that forces us as statisticians to look again at what is a transaction, what is an asset. In all of these things, it is very important not only to bring on board the National Statistical Office, but all parties involved. And at the end of the day, we must ask ourselves, what are we measuring, and are we measuring it correctly? This brings new frontiers for statisticians, and I think to that regard, having a sound quality assessment framework, having a quality assurance framework brings quality to the fore and ensures that we have sound and reliable data for economic policy making. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, for your insightful comments. The specific examples related to finance and how the NQAF can be used to define scope of what we are trying to measure and how we can be transparent. Thank you. All right, we don't have much time left, so now I would like to open the floor to seek your comments. We are looking for a statement of support from your countries and international and regional organizations, and we invite you to share your experiences with the NQAF. So as before, please identify yourself and yes?
My name is Richard Roberts. I work as a consultant in developing countries on their national strategies for the development of statistics and on quality assurance. I've worked with several countries on introducing quality assurance programs, and I've used the UN NQAF. And the new document is a dramatic improvement in terms of usefulness for the developing countries. Even so, I think there's still a barrier, a significant one for countries in terms of implementing the new document. And it's an issue of the tool or tools for implementation. I think it comes down to questionnaires, and the specific suggestion is for the application of Annex A. There are many, many elements to be assured in there. And the countries have difficulty in saying, well, what is the set of questions for the assessment of the quality of the institution overall, and then at the domain level. You should be able to use this approach for a domain of statistics, also for a particular census or survey or a particular set of administrative records, for an output, a particular output. And then also there'd be the assessment, quality assessment for another ministry, which is somewhat different than the NSI. So the specific suggestion here, as the expert group goes forward looking at implementation, is it possible to develop a set of sample questionnaires? Typically they're called questionnaires for self-assessment. So here is the questionnaire for the NSO, here is a questionnaire for a domain, and here is a questionnaire for the other things that I've already mentioned. Another approach to that is to take the elements to be assured in Annex A and indicate for each element, is this relevant for the NSO? Is it relevant for a domain? Is it relevant for a census or survey? So that's a table with all of these elements and about 8 or 9 columns, because I think there's 8 or 9 different kinds of questionnaires depending at what level you're carrying out the assessment. Related to that, I pose a question. There is a large number of elements in Annex A. Could one address the question, what is the minimum essential set of elements? Perhaps this is the minimum set of essential elements. Perhaps maybe some of them could be considered not essential. Is 100 data points enough to assess the quality of an institution or of a domain? I pick 100 arbitrarily, but it's a nice round number, and it's significantly less than the number of elements in Annex A. So I pose that as a question and possibly even a suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Richard. That is a very good point. I would say, if I can speak on behalf of the group, the list is so long because quality is so many things, and it's always evolving. But if we are going to get our message out there, it's not the same for any given 2 users. So I agree this is something we should explore, looking for a subset that might be relevant to different groups. Thank you. Are there any other comments? Yes.
CAPMAS Egypt representative. I'd like to share with you what CAPMAS approach. CAPMAS Egypt has shared its view on the draft manual of the United Nations Quality Assurance Framework and provided also its feedback regarding expert group report. In addition, CAPMAS has filled the questionnaire on the implementation of the general framework on quality assurance and attended the meetings held in this regard. So in the name of Egypt, we support the items and recommendations included in the manual, especially that related to the development and implementation of the statistical quality assurance framework, taking into consideration applying the international standards to produce high quality and comparable data and statistics. And also we welcome the future action plan of the working group on the United Nations National Quality Assurance Framework. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes?
Pakistan, Secretary Statistics Pakistan. My question is posed to our speaker from IMF. Number one, how is this quality assurance? Is it's just confined to the area of statistics? And number two, if we want assistance in it, how do we get it? Because I'm aware of a lot of quality assurance frameworks in our country, standard specifications. So these are confined to statistical procedures, methodologies, and figures and facts. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, again, that is an interesting question. Where do we go in defining quality? What is the scope? I think we would agree it goes beyond the outputs. It goes to all the processes, but it's not an easy question to answer, and it's something that we should consider during the implementation phase. Thank you. Are there any more comments? Oh, sure. Okay. Okay. Okay.
Yes. With regard to the data quality assessment frameworks that we have been using, you may know that we have been using the tool to conduct what are called reports on the observance of standards and codes. That's called the ROSCs. We have not been doing these within the last couple of years. However, on your question about technical assistance is focused more on statistical outputs. And so, for example, we provide TA on national accounts and prices, on government finance statistics, on monetary and financial statistics. In doing so, of course, our staff and experts, when they are in the field, would use the data quality assessment framework as a guidepost. But the general challenge is, of course, and this is where I say that the NQAF takes the broader view, is that there will always be sometimes limitations on some of the recommendations that we would make and sometimes these things take years to address. For example, I could give an example of countries where when we started developing international investment position, which is the stocks compare for foreign assets and foreign liabilities, we found that the countries' laws were not very specific on who's responsible for that. So in these cases, we would advise based on the kind of community of knowledge we have, but in regard to the broader issues of quality assessment and quality assurance, we don't provide targeted TA in this area.
Thank you, Paul. We had another comment.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Actually, it's more like for information that the handbook on statistical organization, of course, has a chapter on quality management, and your work will be, I mean, the work and the new manual will be the core of this chapter. I've been in touch. This is more for information with Matthias that now we have already an advanced draft. But I count also on the group, probably through Matthias, so that you have a look at this chapter and you align it with the latest development in the guidelines. So I thank you in advance also for taking care of that. And this will be also a place where we can make some promotion, because the handbook is not there to repeat everything you have in your guidelines, because otherwise it would be like more than 1,000 pages at the end. But I think it would be also the nice place to make some promotion for the guidelines. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. We have time for one more comment. Okay, in that case, I'll turn it over to my fellow panel members for some final comments. Paul?
Well, I don't have much to add. First of all, I would say that it was a very useful discussion, and thank you for the feedback. Perhaps just to say on the gentleman's question about the having tools specific to domains, I think the expert group, when we were developing the manual, we were very conscious of the need to have a product that will transcend all domains. And in this regard, to the extent that we've also sought to harmonize all the work that has been done in this area. One can think of, for example, that the work that the IMF has done on the data quality assessment frameworks for specific data sets, those could be used as foundation tools if one wanted to apply the NQAF principles, as it were, to a specific data set. But I think this was very much an issue that we dealt with, and I think Matthias was very much keen as the Secretariat, as were the chairs, to ensure that we have a product that could be applied, whether you were talking about climate statistics or financial statistics.
Thank you, Paul. Lisa, do you have any final comments?
My thought is that as we discuss so many areas of statistics and initiatives, the bottom line would be quality. So this issue of quality assurance should be, in all of the areas that we are discussing. And so we look forward to more and more country experiences being shared on how this National Quality Assurance Framework will be useful in each context. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. And I would just like to add that listening to the various comments here, the comments are from all over the place, and this brings us back to relevance. And this is why we need to update our National Quality Assurance Framework. We talked about the specific content on the SDGs and the new data sources, but relevance also leads to collaboration, not just internationally, but within your National Statistical Office or the National Statistical System, and that can be expanded, as mentioned by the gentleman from Ghana, to academia and to regional areas too, because people have different needs in terms of quality. So quality assurance is important now and will continue to be important. Thank you. And Matthias?
Thank you very much. I think this was a very useful discussion, and I just look at my paper where I put down some important elements, and I just would like to read them. Need to need to certify, need to assess data from different sources. Also, producers are interested to have quality. Non-traditional data producers, ministries are interested in data quality for themselves. Also assess the coordination function as a very important element, and also here a comment from Richard Roberts that maybe there should be a self-assessment questionnaire, and also maybe an indication to whom things are relevant. So there's a range of things came up, I think very useful, where clearly the expert group got some good ideas on how to maybe provide some tools that are useful. It's clear that the manual is useful as such. However, it should maybe be complemented by appropriate tools. Of course, at the same time, we don't want to have a proliferation of tools. I think we are looking forward to provide some more tools, but want to be very careful and conscientious not to put guidance over guidance. I think this is never a good idea, but to provide complementary additional tools. So I think this is what I take down, and also as the assignment here for the expert group. No, thank you very much, and thank you very much for giving the opportunity to introduce the manual, and thank you very much for the panel that joined here today to promote the data quality and also to talk about implementation today. Thank you very much. Okay, you can close the meeting here, bye.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for attending. This marks the conclusion of the meeting. Thank you.